Thursday, June 20th, everyone. Today is the start of astronomical summer across North America. And in today's weather forecast, we're going to be walking you through the forecast with our heat out there, with our remaining heat wave that continues across the United States over the next several days, and rounds of severe weather, which could include significant severe weather, especially as we go into next week, and tropical weather updates later on in the video as we have more areas of interest from the National Hurricane Center. So a busy forecast ahead today. Make sure if you are new to the channel to subscribe down below. We cover southern Canada, the United States, and the tropics on this channel. Make sure to give the video a like by giving it a thumbs up if you do enjoy today's weather forecast after the video. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll get to those later on today. So let's go here and look at why we have summer solstice. It's because the Western Hemisphere has the direct sun over there. So it's warmer across portions of North America today. Summer solstice is from June 20th today through June 22nd, and then it goes around to autumnal fall equinox in September 22nd and 23rd, when most of North and South America do have that direct sunlight. So let's look here at our temperatures this morning. You can see where we do have the warmer air, and that is where temperatures started off this morning, again into the middle and upper 70s. Further off to the north and west, we have a little bit of a boundary sitting here from Nebraska, Iowa, into Wisconsin, and the upper peninsula of Michigan. North of that boundary, temperatures this morning much more refreshing and pleasant. Nice morning to go for a walk across Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and the Dakotas, with temperatures starting off into the 50s. Looking here at the geopotential height, basically that's fancy wording for showing you where that ridge or that trough will be. And we don't have any troughs to really talk about today, but a big ridge of high pressure here with the deep reds across the eastern portion of the country. So this means afternoon highs in that area in the eastern U.S. and the southeastern U.S. will be back into the 80s, if not the 90s, this afternoon. And when you factor in all of those dew point temperatures, and if you know, dew point temperatures measures the moisture content in the atmosphere. The higher the number, the more moisture there is, especially when you get into these 70s for dew points. That's air you can wear. You walk outside and you can feel it immediately as you head out the front door or the back door to go outside, and you definitely feel it out there, and that's what makes it feel like to the body. So here's the heat index this afternoon across the eastern and southeastern U.S., well into the 90s, if not triple digits again, especially over here into southeastern and eastern Texas, Louisiana, even parts of the Northeast there. 97 heat index reading this afternoon in Boston, 101 in Hartford, and even 100 up here toward Portland, Maine. So definitely going to be pretty hot even up into the Northeast. We are continuing to watch for the potential of severe weather on the northern periphery of all of the heat as we go into the day today. We have a slight risk of severe weather across the plains, especially into northwestern Nebraska as we go through the day today. A slight risk of severe weather from New York State up into the northeast New England, so New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, coastal Maine there into Massachusetts and northern Connecticut as we go through the day today. Mainly we are looking for those 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts here with those hazards. That's going to be the main hazard from any storms that develop today, followed by some hail of quarter size or larger, especially here into southeastern Wyoming and the western Nebraska panhandle. These areas could see a couple hailstones in excess of hen egg size, so pretty large hail there, and a couple of tornadoes cannot be ruled out, especially into Nebraska and South Dakota as we go into this afternoon, having a 2% chance of that later today. So why do we have this? Here is the thunderstorm fuel. This is your surface-based instability across the Northeast through the Ohio Valley, back through the Midwest, into the Central Plains there in Nebraska. Instability values climbing over 2,000 joules per kilogram in most instances. So this afternoon, again, spotty storm coverage here, and this is kind of the pattern we've been in, and this is the pattern we're going to be in here for the next couple of days. You can see not everybody's going to see a thunderstorm, but if you do get under one of those, severe weather will be possible with the instability we have today. A little bit more greater storm coverage across South Dakota, Nebraska, into the Hawkeye State of Iowa, into northern Illinois, into southern Minnesota later on this evening. More spotty storm coverage across the Northeast, and notice the absence of storms across the southeast U.S. That is because the center of the ridge of high pressure in the heat dome is down there across the southeast, so that really doesn't allow for those thunderstorms to grow. We don't have a lot of lift. We have a lot of sinking air So a lot of sunshine, a lot of heat down there. And then early Friday morning, you can see a complex of storms moving through the Sioux Falls area, maybe into Fort Dodge, Iowa, and towards portions of Minnesota. We'll keep a close eye on that. That complex of storms could be producing some pretty heavy rainfall up here into places like northwestern Nebraska, from the Nebraska Panhandle into eastern South Dakota and southern Minnesota, a swath there of potentially over 2 or 3 inches worth of rain going through just your Friday morning commute over the next several hours, and in a short amount of time that could lead to some flash flooding. We have a slight to a moderate risk for flash flooding here for portions of the upper Mississippi Valley back there into the high plains, especially for southeastern South Dakota, far northwest Iowa, and far southwestern Minnesota through your Friday morning commute there. And what a moderate risk for flash flooding means is numerous flash flood events will be likely, with some significant events possible. Many streams may flood, potentially even affecting larger rivers in that area that is affected by that moderate risk of flash flooding. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Heading into the upcoming weekend, on Friday, June 21st, tomorrow, the heat will continue across the southeast, but then by the time we get into the weekend time frame, it's going to expand back to the west. So that's where the center of the ridge of high pressure will be, back into the Four Corners region, back into the central plains and southern plains there. And that's going to be a watch for some excessive heat out there. So walking you through that, high temperatures tomorrow afternoon on your Friday, back into the 80s and 90s here. We have a very sharp boundary up here that's been up here for a while. North of that, cooler air. South of that, a lot of heat building as we go into Friday. Saturday continues to see that again. South of the boundary, we're going to have more 90s out there, even some triple digits, and same thing on Sunday. But notice as we go into the weekend, a lot of the extreme and excessive heat starts to build a little bit further off to the west. So that's going to be the trend. Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. The heat out east will ease a little bit, and then the more excessive and extreme heat will back off a little bit further to the west as we go through the weekend. Looking at that time frame, we're still going to be dealing with rounds of some severe weather as we go into Friday. A slight risk of severe weather from eastern Wyoming into South Dakota, northern Nebraska, into southwestern Minnesota, and far northwest Iowa. Another marginal risk over here into places like in Northeast Ohio, Pennsylvania, southern New York State, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, and northern New Jersey. So we have a lot of areas, again, on the northern periphery of this that will start to see storms. Again, spotty coverage Friday afternoon, maybe a complex of showers and storms trying to develop and grow upscale into a squall line across the upper Midwest, the upper Mississippi Valley region, back into the plains as we go into Friday evening, particularly the plain states of South Dakota and Nebraska going into tomorrow evening. That slides eastward. We have a cold front moving east across the upper Mississippi Valley, Great Lakes region on Saturday. Slight risk for the Badger State of Wisconsin, eastern portions of Minnesota, northeast Iowa, and parts of the upper peninsula there of Michigan, with a marginal extending back toward Kansas City, Kirksville, Missouri there, and Des Moines. We are keeping a close eye Saturday afternoon on that cold front. We could have some spotty storm coverage in the afternoon, maybe a little bit of a broken line of some supercell thunderstorms Saturday afternoon with all modes, tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail. The tornado threat is still pretty low. I think the main risk here on Saturday will be for wind and hail. And then so far on Sunday, no outlooked areas from the Storm Prediction Center for any severe weather. But again, we are in this active pattern. Would not be surprised to see a marginal or slight risk a little further east on Sunday. You can see Sunday afternoon some storms firing up there. The eastern Ohio Valley, the lower Ohio River Valley to the northeast. Some of those storms may become severe across the northeast if enough instability allows them to become severe across that region on Sunday. Here are the rainfall totals this weekend from Friday tomorrow, June 21st, through Sunday, June 23rd. You can see the heaviest rains up here across Minnesota, Wisconsin, the upper peninsula there of Michigan, into southeastern Canada. So Ontario and Quebec as we go into the weekend. And then underneath that, it's all about the heat, so not a lot of rainfall, maybe some popcorn storms here and there. But those are more localized and very hard to predict where they will develop. Heading into next week, let's look at our temperature anomalies. This is from Monday, June 24th through Friday, June 28th. Notice we cool off a little bit, a little below normal across the Great Lakes and interior New England, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But look at all the heat building further off to the west, from the Rockies into the plains, and especially out west of there, into the Sacramento Valley, Nevada, up into Idaho here, into southeastern Oregon as well. And you can see that early next week, 90s, triple-digit heat across the plains, especially central southern plains into the southeast, and then back across the desert southwest. That will continue as we go into the middle of next week. And then by later next week here, by a week from today, we're going to start to see a lot of that back further to the west again with much cooler air and a nice break from the heat across the eastern U.S., a much-deserved break from the heat across the eastern U.S. later next week. We got to watch this weather pattern. We're going to have a trough or a couple of troughs trying to traverse the northern periphery of this dome of high pressure here that's centered across the Four Corners region and West Texas. And what we're going to see here is a very energetic jet stream across the Dakotas, into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and really the upper Midwest in general, into the Great Lakes and the Northeast on the northern and northeastern quadrant of that ridge of high pressure as it's centered down here again across the Four Corners region and West Texas. Now, we do have to talk about this because it is that time of year. Potential derecho environments is when you have a high pressure system, the airflow around it is clockwise, and when you have that high pressure, maybe just move it a little further west over here, you still have the airflow clockwise across the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, that vicinity. That could lead to more progressive derechos and that type of pattern that could develop next week. We look to the instability on the European ensemble guidance because when you're looking at something long range, you want to look at ensemble guidance. Almost a certainty here across the Corn Belt that we're going to see over 1,000 joules per kilogram of instability next week. And looking at the 2,000 or more, you can see that's still pretty high probability, 60-70% into the Corn Belt there, especially in Iowa. Then over 3,000 joules per kilogram, still medium probabilities there, 40, 50, even almost 60% there in Nebraska and Iowa as we go into next week. So when we're looking at the instability, when you're looking at the jet stream and the pattern recognition, that could lead to the potential of these big squall lines that drop through the northwest flow across the Dakotas, Minnesota, into Iowa, into Wisconsin, northern Illinois, into Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. That type of vicinity up there, that is an area familiar with these type of systems. If you remember the one in Iowa just a couple summers ago, August 2020, while that was a very rare intensity derecho, I do think we still need to watch this pattern because you know the power of derechos in Iowa. You know the power of derechos, what they can do to corn and beans and your corn crops and all that stuff up into the Midwest. We need to keep an eye on this. Climatology for these suggests one derecho on average every year in places like Chicago, Madison, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Detroit, also Toledo. One derecho every 2 years in places like La Crosse, Des Moines, Omaha, up here in towards the Green Bay area. So we keep an eye on this here for climatology, and we'll keep you updated as we get closer into next week. Looking at the tropical weather update here, the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida has a 40% probability of something developing near the southeast coast, off the east coast of Florida and Georgia as we go in towards the next 7 days. Also a greater chance, a 50% probability of development right where Alberto made landfall, there in the Bay of Campeche, the east coast of Mexico. Again, basically a mirror image of what Alberto was, and you can see the water temperatures are still well above normal there into the Bay of Campeche, into the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean here, into parts of the southeast coast. Now, what's limiting the one up here, that why it only has a 40%, is that the water temperatures are near normal to slightly below normal where it's at now. The shelf waters near the east coast of Florida and Georgia are a little bit warmer, so we'll have to wait and see on that. This area of interest down here is a greater probability to a 50% because the water temperatures are much greater in warmth across the east coast of Mexico, even the shelf waters there as well, even though they may have cooled down because of Alberto. When we look at the wind shear as well, that's another aspect of this, is that the wind shear is a little bit stronger to the north as well, and we have cooler water temperatures, so that's kind of hindering some of the development there, but less wind shear into the Bay of Campeche and the western Gulf of Mexico. That's why that system has a greater chance of developing, and really right on Alberto's heels as we go in towards next week. This takes you all the way through the next 10 days, through Sunday, June 30th. The tropical depression probability in percent here, basically a certainty again. Right where Alberto went is where this new system will be. pretty much a certainty. We're going to have at least a tropical depression here just to the north of the Bahamas as we go in towards through that Sunday, June 30th time frame over the next 10 days. Tropical storm probability percentages, almost a certainty. We're going to have another tropical storm here on the east coast of Mexico. We'll have to keep a very close eye on that. Probably not a tropical storm there for Florida or Georgia, but we'll have to, again, keep a close eye on that. Probably remaining a tropical depression as we go through the end of June. Thank you all for watching. If you like today's weather forecast, give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to this channel as we'll keep you updated on daily weather forecasts across southern Canada, the United States, and the tropics on this channel. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll get to those later on today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Thursday out there.